I may have thrown a little shade at a couple of friends recently on some podcast episodes, so I wanted to address that, talk about that, come clean on that. That's what's happening in this episode.
You know when someone is selling from stage and at the end the audience gets up and rushes to the back of the room to buy? That's a table rush. My name is Misha Z, and the Table Rush Talk Show is all about bringing you the tools, strategies, and tactics that you can use to grow your audience and inspire them to buy.
So at the end of the night, I do an inventory, and in the inventory, basically, the first question I answer is, where was I resentful? Was I resentful at anybody during the day? And I can get nuanced with that. Was I judgmental? Was I irritated? Like really, what was triggering me in that way? And so I'll inventory that out. On this particular day, I had some friend, right, who whenever I hang out with him, it's always about him. And when I say that, he never asks me like, hey, what are you up to? Like, I did this founding member launch, for the Influence Army, podcast chugging along. I got all this kind of stuff going on. He literally never once in months has said, hey man, what are you up to? How's that going? And he's consistently talking about what he's up to, right? So I will, for some reason that might irritate me. The flip side of that is, I had gone through this another failed relationship breakup, and I was really hurting for a while. This was a few years back, quite a number of years back by now. Gosh, it's funny how time flies. But that dude, man, he listened to me bellyache for years, right? So when I look at it in that perspective, it's like, hey, he's really having a lot of success and having a lot of fun with what he's doing right now. So he's all talking about it, right? And so good for him. And when I can look at it in that perspective, everything's good. There's the balance that ebbs and flows. And I'm also very aware that, like, I was hanging out with another buddy. We went and had coffee. My friend John, hey John G. And, man, I just went on and on and on for a good 45 minutes. It was all about me, right? And at the very end, we were getting ready to leave. Well, he's like, okay, well, that's great. I got to go now. And I was like, oh my gosh, how was your weekend? Right? So I asked him, and he had this epic tale to tell. So thank God I asked him that question. And, man, I can be selfish too. So anyway, there's an example of some of the nuance of where was I resentful. Next question is, where was I selfish? Like, was I selfish throughout the day? Where are points of that? Where was I dishonest? Where was I afraid? And those are the first four questions. And afraid, what are some fears that pop up now and then? Are like, oh my gosh, what's next? How am I going to deliver on what I'm creating? How am I going to get the word out? Oh my gosh, I've got these founding members for the Influence Army. A good handful are just showing up and committed and all in, which is amazing. And then I've never run a membership before, so some people that aren't super engaged right now, I will feel insecure about them, and I'll think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with them? Are they going to leave, or why aren't they engaging, or all these sorts of things? And hopefully at some point I'll have the space to ask them, and be like, hey, what's up? What do you need? And that also got me thinking, as well, like some memberships that I'm in, sometimes I'm really busy and I don't have time to take advantage. But I do jump in again. One's actually very expensive. And I'm able to jump in and get key content, key answers when I need to, which I love. So I'm looking forward to seeing that develop. But that's just one thing, right? What are my fears there? And in that particular case, I'm reminded, to flip that and be like, hey, how can I be of service, of maximum service to my founding members, to the members in my Influence Army membership, and I'm getting the answers clear. Like, here's the next thing you need to deliver. Here's the next thing you need to deliver, and I'm getting amazing feedback and responses, and like truly, people are like, "Oh, this is awesome! You are helping me so much. You're transforming me. You're giving me clarity." On the messaging, just and on stretching as well, of how they're putting themselves out in the market, and they're learning, and just it's really I'm humbled by what I'm getting to do, and how I get to share my superpowers and get that feedback, and just I'm humbled that I get to be of service, and I'm being directed by source in that way. Anyway, I will get to the shade that I was throwing. If you listen to the last couple of episodes, I threw shade at a couple people. One was a founding member. I don't know actually if it was shade, but in my inventory, at the end of the night, I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. I need to look at this." How I was perhaps talking about some people, or what my thoughts were. Anyway, so I'll get to it. So, you know, uh, oh, the selfish one. That was, what's that question? Where was I? Where was I resentful? Where was I selfish? And selfish was like, hey, when I was hanging out with my friend John, and I hijacked the conversation, and yeah, it's nice to be balanced in that regard. But it's also great to know that, hey, yeah, it's give and take, ebb and flows. Sometimes I get to be in the spotlight. Other times, other people get to be in the spotlight. And if I can extrapolate that out to a bigger and bigger field of vision, that's true there too as well. Like sometimes in Facebook land or marketing land, I get a lot of attention, and sometimes it shifts to other people. And how do I love that and nurture that, and appreciate those cycles? Anyway, so dishonest, where was I afraid? Covered those. And then the next question is, do I owe an apology? And as I was journaling last night, and thinking about my day, and I was like, I was all fired up when I was doing these 2 podcast episodes, and I was recording them, and I was thinking like, oh, like, what would these guys think if they listened to that podcast episode, right? And there's this idea of the scar versus the wound. If you're in a woundy situation, you don't talk about the wound, because there's going to be some raw feelings that maybe aren't true, and I'm speaking from emotions, right? And you can see that on internet land a lot. People are in these woundy spaces and just thrashing people, and opening loops, and fighting, and all this kind of stuff. And then they settle down, and they're like, oh yeah, I see my part. Maybe I was out of line. Maybe I was in a heightened emotional state. All this human stuff we go through, right? And so, I'm committed to publishing 5 days a week on my podcast. I'm also committed to, and I've been committed to from the start, publishing everything that I record. So if I set out to record an episode and I record it, I publish it. And I do very little editing. I just do. I'm like, you know what? For speed of content, and for learning, and for growth, it just served me very well. And I think there's maybe 1 or 2 episodes out of coming up on 600 that I didn't publish. I can't even remember why. But at the time, I was just like, this is too woundy. And I think that served me well. So anyway, I recorded, I was thinking of these 2 guys. I recorded this episode, and these 2 episodes, and I'll get to what I said. But so, I go through the inventory, and it's, do I owe an apology? The next question is there anything I need to discuss with somebody right away? So maybe my thinking's gone sideways, or I'm in a ton of fear or a ton of resentment, or maybe I've got some thoughts and I'm thinking about doing something that I need to run by somebody. It's so that's such a great question, and I usually try and write something down there every night just to be clean on my thinking, because our thoughts can be sneaky, and all of a sudden I can be in a relationship I shouldn't be in or don't want to be in because my thoughts, because I'm not communicating. Anyway, thank you for listening. And what's the next question I answer is what is it? Oh, was I kind and loving towards all? So was I kind and loving towards all? And most days that's the case, man. I try to lead with love. I just try to lead with love in my life, and I do. And I just at my age, everything I've been through, the way I see things, it's not worth fighting about almost anything. Um, and leading with love, and my son Waylon's helping me with logo stuff, and he's very creative, and so we got in a little scrap. We both can be stubborn, and then there's the whole father son aspect of a relationship too. He's 20, what, I'm 54, and we I was a little stubborn in a situation, and so, there I'd be like, oh my gosh, I maybe wasn't as kind as I could have, because I could have been here. And, so it's like, oh yeah, I need to apologize for my part in things. And it wasn't a crazy argument by any means, but I'm just saying it's nuanced. I want it to be love all the time, good energy, positive energy. And so the sooner I can cop to my little part in a scrap, the better. And so I told him, hey man, I really appreciate, he's doing this logo work for me. He's busy with school, he's got a job, he's got a life, and he's cranked out a couple really cool little logos. And I let him know how much I appreciate the work he's doing for me. And I was like, hey man, I said, one thing I said to him was like, this isn't usable in Canva, just nuanced stuff. And I was just in a heightened state, and I was like, well, it's actually extremely usable because I've already started using it. So I apologize for the way I said that to him. Anyway, yeah, so was I kind and loving to all? And most days the answer is absolutely 100% yes, but I do like to look through there and be like, was I kind and loving toward all? And in my thoughts as well. And then this is where those two guys came up for me. So it's like, was I kind and loving toward all? And I was like, well, I threw a little shade in these podcast episodes. I did it to highlight a point, right? To highlight a point, which I think is very true. But my perception can be skewed, and I didn't give the balanced other side. So both of these guys have helped me tremendously, right? And so anyway, I'll get to what I said. You can listen to the previous two episodes. What were they? I actually don't even have them named yet, because I recorded them but haven't published them yet. So that's the question. Was I kind and loving toward all? The next question is, what could I have done better? And that's also another great thing. It's like, all right, what could I have done better? So yesterday I did a class for my Influence Army, and I was teaching on how to craft a response. I have this framework for crafting a response. When you put yourself out there to sell something or offer something or give an idea, you can start getting, if that question or idea, whatever, that post or that email takes hold, you start getting a lot of questions. And so how do I recraft a heart-centered, effective response that is, in effect, a template that you can just cut and paste and send a bunch? So I have a template for that that's awesome and amazing. And so we were working through that on this class. I was teaching on it. I wish I could remember the framework name. I can't right now. It's early in the morning as I record this. But what I do in my classes is I give a lot of workshop opportunities for the members to interact and ask each other questions. And man, the synergy and the energy and the creation that comes out of that is freaking incredible. I gotta say, it's just incredible. If I can keep my mouth shut and let people interact and brainstorm together, wow, the results are incredible. Sometimes I do need to to cut some conversation short. That's natural. You want to control the flow a little bit, but one of the people on there was asking questions, and we had this tsunami of creativity happening, and the person that was getting asked the questions was really having a breakthrough growth moment, right? It was really cool, and then I interjected and took over the conversation at one point because I wanted to take it a certain direction, and in hindsight, I was like, what I could have done better is let those two interact longer. I could have let that conversation go longer, totally. And I think that's such a gift when we can do that, when we can give the space for conversations to play out. And I see people do that all the time. Coaches like Stu McLaren, I'm on a bunch of his stuff right now. I'm all in on it. He's just so gifted at creating memberships and helping us create memberships, teaching us how to have powerful memberships, and I'm already experiencing that. I'm using what Stu's teaching me to build my community, my membership, and the founding members are loving it. I should say our membership. But he is so gifted at letting their thoughts play out. And it's so hard. Like I've been on a call with him where he's got a couple thousand people on there and he opens it up to questions. And when you do something like that, man, you can get some people that have some things to say that might not be on point to what you're trying to do. And he's so gifted at letting them expel their energy, is how I'd say it. And then he can give a very thoughtful response. And so I was like, yeah, that is something I can work towards doing better. And I've been doing very good at it, I got to say. I'm so inspired. And I'm actually a great listener, so I get to bring all that in. Sometimes I will take over a conversation, and in this particular case, I was like, I could have let that roll on a little bit more. There might have been more for them to gain. Anyway, then the next question is was I thinking about myself most of the day, or was I thinking about others, what I could pack into the stream of life? And man, that's a powerful question. I like that it was the question is, was I thinking about myself most of the day? And hopefully not. Hopefully I was only thinking about myself. For me, I'm fairly egocentric. I say that with a big open heart and a laugh, obviously, but I'm like, man, if it could be 10 or 20% and the other 80%, I'm thinking about how I can serve, what I can pack into the stream of life, man, that's amazing. So I like to see if I'm getting out of balance in there and just becoming completely self-obsessed, and worrying about me. And so that's such a powerful question. Then the next two things are I might have to turn this into two-part episode. We'll see. The next two questions the next one is a statement. It's, basically don't drift into remorse, self-pity, morbid reflection, because that is not, it doesn't serve others. It's not useful to others. And I just find that so, so powerful, because sometimes I can slip into some self-pity or some morbid reflection, or I could really beat myself up about, as the path narrows in life, as I grow more and as things become more and more nuanced on like resentments are very small for me now that cut me off from the sunlight of the spirit, right? As I continue to become a more loving person, how am I trying to say this? Just the path narrows, So I can still beat myself up about something. Like it'd be like, oh my gosh, I should have let that conversation play out longer, and then I can catastrophize around that, and think, oh yeah, the next thing you know, the membership's gonna fall apart, or or this or that, and it's like, oh my gosh, like you're human, learn from the situation, move on, right? But sometimes big things can happen that maybe I'm a part of, where I can fall into remorse or morbid reflection. And, definitely was feeling that when I had my last heavy breakup, which was, 8 years ago, 9 years ago by now, something like that. I've lost track. But that little statement would just provide me so much relief at night when I was, felt regretful that the one had got away, And then the very last question is, God, God forgive me. What are my corrective measures? God forgive me. What are my corrective measures? And, that's such an interesting thing to ask. And, the one was like, hey, corrective measures for that conversation on the class could be, hey, next time I have an opportunity to interact one-on-one with that person, say, hey, you know what? Sorry I interrupted you, right? Like, hey, I in hindsight, I'd have let that conversation play out a little bit more and maybe ask her opinion on that. And, is there anything, like, it would be like, hey, did you get everything you needed from there? Can I address anything? Something like that, right? And also trust my intuition as well as to, does anything need to happen in that regard? Because, like, I trust that I'll be inspired to ask that question of her if necessary, if the opportunity arises. Like, trust that, oh yeah, I'll be inspired to say, hey, I interrupted you that one conversation. Like, everything good there? Are you whole? Or just completely let it go. Because I can, oh my gosh, there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. Like, it's like, I'm not that important, right? So she might not even have noticed. That's the other thing. We'll let that slide. But anyway, so it was like, oh yeah, these couple of things I didn't feel great about the two things, the little shade that I threw. You know what? I'm going to keep going on this and just have it be a longer podcast episode, I think, versus turning it into 2 episodes. We'll see. This is either the beginning of part 2, or I've just let it play out. So
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.